In this video, I'm going to point out a recurring motif from Babylonian works and then into Genesis, where God creates, gets things started, and then disappears while things go bad, and then comes back to call a hero who's going to kick ass and take names. Genesis, by itself, is derived from the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, the 7 tablets of creation. It's called the Enuma Elish. I had to edit in a correction here. In Genesis, just chapter 1 through 7, if you would have Noah naked and his sons not cover him back up, that would be it right there. And you wouldn't have 2 creation stories, you just have 1. And you wouldn't have the Adam's lineage, chapter 5. Those wouldn't be there. But everything from creation up to the destruction and starting over is up in Genesis before the Babylon story, before the Tower of Babel story. Yeah, that part right there. That's the part I mean. It's like the Enuma Elish. Beyond that, it's added to. It's been extended on. I want to point out something. If you go to the Enuma Elish, you're going to find out that Apsu, the creator god, after creating, and then there's some gods that are created to help out, but they go bad, it becomes raucous, and Apsu is gone, put away. Apsu is out of the picture as everything goes bad. This whole destruction with Tiamat and the noise, the raucousness, everything that's going on. If you read the story, you would see that. It's not very long. It's like Genesis 1 through 8 or something like that. It's very short. Okay. What happens, though, is Marduk is the called hero. It's a mythical story. Marduk didn't exist. Apsu didn't exist. It's a mythical story about... It's on a monomyth template. I'll just say that and tell you that there's something in common with other teachings. All right. Here, Apsu is gone while everything goes bad and is back when Marduk, the called hero, is there to wipe everything out and start over again. When we get to Genesis, you find in chapter 4, Cain leaves the presence of the Lord. God is completely gone out of the picture until when? It's time to call the called hero, Noah. God returns then to have everything wiped out. That motif begins to repeat itself in chapter 12, in the second part of Genesis that was after the first part. They were not written at the same time. 2 different stories stitched together. That's why there's 2 creations, and that's why there's 2 callings of Noah, if you look in there. All right. When we get down into chapter 12, God puts Abram and Sarai into Canaan during a famine and then is gone while things go bad. Sarai does what? She has sex with, she marries Pharaoh while she's the wife of Abram, because Abram is scared. So he just gives up his wife and so that's what's going on. Things are going bad and God's not there. God sends plagues. How long do those take? When does God return? God returns when it's time to convert Abram into Abraham. That's an iteration of the individual right there. So God's there in the beginning, disappears, everything goes bad, returns when it's time for a called hero. 3 times. Enuma Elish first. Then Genesis in the first part of Genesis before the flood. And then after God calls Abram, and it happens again. What we're observing there is a common motif. People look at flood stories or resurrection stories or things like that because they're very obvious. But when you look at things like this, they're not as obvious. And what happens when God returns? Apsu, yeah, we've got to destroy all the bad stuff. We got to destroy the earth. With Noah, we get down with Abraham. Now it's time to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. God returns and it's time to destroy the bad. That is a recurring motif. I'm going to show you something else between the 2 that is a comparison. There's some interesting alignments here. We're going to go to Genesis. And what I'm going to suggest here, watch what I do. I'm going to say Noah. I'm going to search for how many times Noah's name is repeated here. And his name is repeated 41 times in this here in the book of Genesis. Now, the reason that I thought of looking that up actually is when you read it, sometimes the name is just repeated too many times. It's over and over the top. It's like we already know who you're talking about. So there's a numbering pattern that's actually in place. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons. Yeah, we know who you're talking about. So what is that? We don't have these memorized. We just read right over it. If you look, though, it's 41 times. Is that significant? Let's go look at the Enuma Elish. All right, I've got it up here. And I want to comment, Noah, he's the called hero, I'm saying, in Genesis. Marduk is the called hero here. His name is repeated exactly 41 times. All right, I'm going to keep this video short. I've got a whole channel full of videos like this farther back if you're interested. But I'm going to keep this one short and demonstrate here that there's some patterns that are deeper patterns that we don't even really pay attention to or that we don't know. We'll read these things, but back then they had to have them memorized. And if they had them memorized, they would have access to that word count in their memory. We don't. We have to use the computer. We think we're smart, but you know what? We're really lacking something. There's so much in there that demonstrates that they're using a numbering pattern in the background. It's all analogous teachings, metaphoric. You know, the best way I can think of describing that is to say the words are all different. The words are wrong. Let me give an example of analogous verbiage. I'm going to tell you something about myself that is a spiritual teaching, but spiritual means mental, okay? That means I've got thought processes up here. We're going to go with Buddha's plain language. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It's founded on our thought, and it's based in our thought. Okay, so we're going to treat all of the teachings that way, but it doesn't sound like it. If I told you that I was fasting and naked, right there, that's a good thing for me. I'm fasting and I'm naked. And people might, you don't interpret that. What does that mean? That means you're not eating anything and you got no clothes on. However, if you take it into the mental world and understand that they mean something different, fasting is what? That means not consuming, not taking things in. You've got things shut off out there. Okay, I'm fasting like fasting is to the world. Turn it off. Just look away. Fasting is to the world and I'm naked, which means that I've resolved my issues and I've got nothing to hide. We can see the flow of that in the Bible. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden before first sin are naked. After sin and they're sent off, they are now clothed. What happens after the world is destroyed? Noah is what? He's naked. So if you think about that on a human life cycle, that's Adam and Eve. That's each one of us as a child before we get hurt. And then after we get hurt, we're clothed. We've got garments on. And then that's metaphorical garments, which means I've got shame, I've got anger, I've got hurt, I've got emotional things that are going to continue to be an issue for me. And that's being clothed. But after the flood and you're naked again represents the idea that after you've resolved this issue, I've got something really bad that I've got to take care of it. And once it's done and I don't feel bad about it anymore, I'm resolved from it, I'm uncovered from it, I'm naked again. That's what that is representing. That's a human life cycle and a healing path. So mentally, there's reasons to learn to interpret these in a way. They all work that same way, and they're all going to come to the same teaching. However, even though they're all made on a framework, that framework, the words, the verbiage, the carrying case, the wrapping paper, the religion, the myth, whatever it is that's carrying that template is going to have an impact. And when it comes down to Abrahamic material, that one has a carrying case that plays into the human psyche and is based and founded in fear. And it really dovetails with how the human works. I mean, even as far as, perversion and things that are in there. And you look around now and God, the Epstein files and Trump and all that and the Christian support and all that. It's like perversion is fine. It's not even a problem anymore. Something's gone really bad. That Bible is not okay. It really isn't. Look what it's causing. Now, what's happened here, though, is different because it's not just the Bible. It is something different, too. It's a lack of understanding the world. That heartland thing, the problem there is that people get isolated. They don't know what the world is really like out there. People might go to war and learn one thing about a person they call an enemy or something and come back, but they really don't know what the world is like or what people is like or people are like or what it's like to live in somebody else's shoes. But they're fed through media. It's like a propaganda It is. It's total propaganda. CNN, Fox, both of them. Propaganda. Feed you, feed you, feed you. And pretty soon your brain gets wired with that, and that's exactly what you believe when it's like, if you went and looked, you would see that that's not the case, for crying out loud. But that's what happens in isolation like that, in places where people don't get cities, larger places become more liberal because people understand that there's a lot more than just them and their ideas. They're a lot more accepting. Christianity, I mean, it doesn't matter what they say. Look at how it functions. Yeah, it is hurting. It is helping hurt. It is not the sole cause. There's a number of things all coming together and dovetailing to create the problem. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about, look, the Bible from its foundational stage. Well, one more thing. In the Enuma Elish, it was that story. It was gods that were created that went raucous, and they were out of control, that had to be destroyed. In Genesis, what happened is that God's sons came down in chapter 6 and took for themselves the beautiful daughters of men, and because of that, giants were born, men of renown, big things. So things had become corrupt. 6, that's where God said, that's it. It's time to, I'm returning now and going to destroy all of this. It was his sons that just did it. In the Enuma Elish, it was gods created by Apsu that were there to do the help that got out of control. Here we have God's sons that went down and created the issue, and it became out of control. Those are common, reoccurring motifs. Genesis is a copy, just dressed a little bit different, of myth. See you in the next video. A final off-the-hand comment. I think about stuff like this from time to time and never have anybody to say it to. But all of you Christians who believe that end times are near, you're going to be exactly correct. What you don't understand is that you're the ones creating it.